the spirit of leaving no one behind, for the first time in Kenyan history, the census shall feature a detailed focus on data of the disadvantaged members of the society, such as persons living with disabilities, the orphaned and vulnerable children, the elderly, and street families. For this year's census, we will be applying a new and more comprehensive data gathering module, than those of previous exercises. The module ensures that we have the statistical information needed to breathe life into key constitutional provisions on equity and the promotion of interests of marginalized and disadvantaged groups.
Okay, so we're leaving no one behind. President Uhuru Kenyatta on the upcoming census. So basically, what you need to know about this particular census that will take place on the night of August 24th and extend up to 31st August is that there will be a first not just for Kenya, but a first for the entire Africa. So this is what we are talking about. It will be the first time in the country's 56 years of independence that intersex people too will be counted. And that is a very interesting conversation that I want to have with Mbage Ng'ang'a, who's the chairman of Kenya Law and Reform Commission and chairman of Task Force Committee on Intersex Persons. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us on The Big Story this evening. This is a big deal, not just for Kenya. This is a big deal because this is the first time that this is happening in Kenya and indeed the region as well. There are those who are very excited about it. They're saying perhaps this is the one way in which we can have to end stigma surrounding intersex persons in Kenya. Mbage Ng'ang'a, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so saying this is the first time that intersex persons will be counted in this particular census. It's the first to happen in Kenya. It's the first, perhaps, not even perhaps, it's the first in the region as well. And there are those who say this is the one way, perhaps, that we can use to end stigma that has been related or associated with intersex persons in Kenya.
Yes, it is.
Good thing, good stride. Where are we as a country? I am having trouble speaking or engaging with Mbage Ng'ang'a. Let's see if we can sort out his earpiece and we see how big a deal this is. But let me bring back Mohammed Gulaidu, the CEO of Frontier Counties Development Council. Sir, you have enumerated some of the issues that face frontier counties. And you're saying, I mean, we have our people, right now there's drought, they may not even be around. And you're saying perhaps the population number should not be used in resource allocation. How then do you ensure, from where you sit, that you have a credible census this time around? Because a couple of years back, it was perceived to be a process or an exercise that would give quote-unquote numbers to specific tribes that would give them an advantage in terms of political power.
Another issue that I wanted actually to address is the issue of ethnicity. I think ethnicity is an issue we need to get away from. And as a country, a census as important as this one, or an exercise as important as this one, should not sustain the legitimacy of the negative sides of ethnicity, because we know that ethnicity and ethnic divisions have been one of the biggest challenges, especially around election times, and even when it comes to allocation of resources. Therefore, you can see even, let me give you just the example of the Somali community. They have been not only mentioned in one of the codes, I mean code 500 I think, but again a subdivision of sub-clans, and then inside within that again some of the sub-clans were not even captured. So it brought a lot of confusion, and I think it's not a good thing to even consider issues such as ethnicity. I think what the government should be doing is ensure that there's more ethnic integration and less manifestation of ethnicity as such. And therefore, that's one of the, I think, negative sides which will come out of a census like this. We know that each politicians normally want to prop up their numbers simply because it gives them power and legitimacy over their roles as during elections and gaining or attaining political power. Therefore, I think this is one of the challenges that this census can bring, just like the previous ones.
I hear you. Let's now bring in Mbage Nganga, who's the chairman of Task Force Committee on Intersex Persons. Sir, I'm really hoping right now you can hear me. I did mention that for the first time in the history of this country, intersex people will be counted in this census. It's the first in Kenya. It's the first in the region. This is a good stride, especially in terms of recognition for intersex people, in terms of getting rid of stigma, in terms of just getting them to be recognized within the society, is it?
Yes, this is a great time for the people of intersex conditions. This is because for a long time, these people have been marginalized because they have not been accepted as normal people in our society. There are societies where children born with intersex conditions are actually killed because they are seen as being the product of a curse, and they face a lot of challenges. They face challenges in terms of documentation. When children are born, especially when the doctors cannot with certainty determine whether the child is male or female, there are question marks, and it becomes difficult for their sex particulars to be noted in our in the birth certificates. Also, in the present times, you find that birth certificates are required in situations where children have to enroll in schools, they have to sit for exams, and if an intersex child doesn't have a birth certificate that identifies her with certainty, they encounter problems. The intersex condition is a condition where you get a person who may have shown indications of having been of a particular sex, call it a female sex, but as the child grows up into puberty, he starts manifesting the characteristics of a male child. So when he was born, a birth certificate may have been issued with a female name, but in puberty, when the sex characteristics manifest themselves such that the child now becomes a male and wants to alter the documentation to reflect what he recognizes his sex as, it becomes difficult because our laws do not provide for procedures of changing such documentation. There are also cases where the parents may want a particular child to be in a sex where they have chosen, and as they grow up and manifest characteristics of the other sex, then the parents insist on surgical interventions being made to so-called normalize the child to the particular sex in which the parents think they want to bring their child as.
Okay.
But as the child grows up,
Okay, I hear you, and the census is just 2 or 3 days away. And this is what concerns me. Already there's stigma out there on intersex persons. The indication is that not very many parents would be willing to actually speak out and just outright tell you, my child is an intersex child, especially when they're at an age where they cannot speak for themselves. How much public information is out there on intersex persons, and how much information is out there that would enable parents to be able to know it's okay. I can speak about my intersex child. I can document this. What are some of the rights that belong to them that perhaps now necessitates the fact that they have to be counted in this census?
Yes, it is true that many parents may not want to come out and show that their children have ambiguous sex characteristics. But they are facing problems, and what we can tell them, those problems will only be solved if they come out and register, so that the government can know with certainty the number of people who have these conditions. So that, as the director of statistics has mentioned, the data will be used to determine the resource allocation. And if these parents want resources to be allocated towards alleviating the problems of their children, then it becomes incumbent on them to ensure that their children are counted. Okay. So we are appealing to them. There are efforts that have been made to publicize the conditions of the intersex people and to try and remove the stigma. There is the Intersex Society of Kenya, where they have been going into publicity campaigns to explain to their members that they should not feel that they are left out.
Okay.
And they should not feel that they are different kind of people. The society will recognize them.
I hear you, and this is how I'm going to help you. So if you're a parent who has a child who's an intersex, it is in the best interest of that child. It is in the best interest of the society that we get to know those individuals, the intersex people. So if you're a parent who has an intersex child, it's important that you mention to the enumerators that your child is intersex. That's the only way, as Mr. Nganga mentioned, that they will be able to get their rights, they will be able to be recognized and perhaps get rid of that stigma. So it's just not for the interest of your child, but for future generations. Remember, it is not your fault, it is not your child's fault. There's very little you can do about this, but you can speak up for your children. You can speak up for your relatives. You can speak up for people you know out there, because no one is supposed to be stigmatized for things they absolutely have zero control over. So let's finish this conversation with looking at this entire census process and how credible it will be. And I know there are certain issues that have been raised. Mohammed Gulaid, thank you for staying with me. I know I've kept you there for a while, but what are the irreducible minimums for you to have a credible census even as this process kicks off?
And I think it's very important to ensure that there's enough coverage and enough enumerators who can go around and visit all the communities in that vast northern parts of Kenya, so that they can visit the water wells where the people are watering the animals. You know, Linda, you can tell people to go back to their homesteads or where they live. But what do you tell somebody whose livelihood depends on moving from one place to another? So there has to be a way, or an innovative way, to find a solution to that. I think a satellite, maybe a GIS form of data capturing mode will be a very useful way of ensuring that no one is left behind. And equally is that this census, even though it has been given a whole week, still I think it's a short time, considering the fact that a whole week maybe was meant for where people are already sedentary. But where people are on the move, 1 week may not be enough, because you never know how many people you're going to leave out. So we have to make sure that everybody is counted, wherever they are. And we have also seen most of our people going into the neighboring countries across the borders. So they should be informed. There must be an information system where we can inform all of them so that they can come back, at least get counted across the border, and then they can go back to their usual business.
Does security bother you? I listened to the interview that Sophia had with the Director General. Is security an issue for you in the census?
And insecurity is definitely an issue. In the northern part of Kenya, as you're aware, Linda, we are dealing with terrorist groups that are really terrorizing. I hope they will not interfere with this census. Already we have seen in the last couple of days areas in northern parts of Kenya where telephone masts and boosters have been destroyed by terrorists. So obviously they are trying to ensure that this census in our region will not take place successfully. These are areas now where the government must put enough security and ensure that both the citizens and the enumerators and all the people involved are safe and secure.
No, but you're the CEO of Frontier Counties Development Council. Surely by now, this is just a few days from now, you must have had this conversation. You must have worked with security officers on the ground, security personnel on the ground, just to ensure this is in place. I mean, your people depend on you.
Yes, you're right, Linda. Even this morning, I was on phone with the regional commissioner of the northeastern part of Kenya, and he had assured me that security will be beefed up. But we also know, Linda, that security is just, that's the much we can do. You cannot really stop people who are bent to cause disruption. And we are going also into the region to talk to the people. For example, fly into Wajir, Mandera, Isiolo in the coming 2 or 3 days, just to keep on also propagating that everybody should go to their homes and be counted and bring this awareness across to all our people. But definitely the issue of insecurity must also be addressed very, very carefully.
I hear you, and we definitely hope for the best, even as this census approaches from 24th to 31st. Mr. Mbagenganga, I will give you the final chance to address individuals who are intersex and parents who have intersex children as the census approaches. What would you like to tell them in 2 minutes?
I would like to assure them that their identity will be protected, so they should not fear about their identities being disclosed. What is being done is for the benefit of their own families, to ensure that the government provides resources for them to be able to access medical support, to be able to have their documentation of their children corrected and issued in the manner that they would like to. It is all for their benefit. They should not feel stigmatized. They are born in the condition they are by God's own will, and society will recognize them as they are. In many years ago, we had a lot of stigma attaching to the people who are physically challenged. But since the last 15 years, we have had the physically challenged people coming out in the open to identify themselves, and they have benefited a lot in the resources and the opportunities that the government has provided. And this will provide an opportunity for the intersex people to also access these opportunities. So allow yourselves to be counted.
To be counted. All right. Glade, in a minute, what are your expectations as the census draws near? 1 minute.
First of all, I will want to, thank the Kenya government, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, to include the intersex people and people who have not been included previously.
They are included.
Yeah, now that they're included, I find it's a very good thing. And at least now for me, I want to make sure that this census will be able to be carried out in a very fair way. No community is disadvantaged. and hopefully that we'll have a peaceful and successful census. It is good. I want to encourage our people to make sure that they're counted, because that's the only way the government can plan and also know how resources. Of course, it's an issue now which is on the table, will be allocated, and we make it easier for them also to capture all the data they need for all kind of services.
I hear you. And thank you for being part of the big story. So I did mention Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i will be having a presser tomorrow. He will touch on the issue of security that is key for Kenyans who've been contributing to this conversation. They want to know, apart from the uniforms and the gadgets and local leaders, what else is being put in place to ensure that we are safe? I mean, I will be expected to open my door at probably midnight, 11 a.m. I need to know who I'm opening the door to. And that is a concern that perhaps the CS needs to address tomorrow. Thank you for watching The Big Story. It's been an interesting conversation on the upcoming census. Mohamed Gulaid, CEO, Frontier Counties Development Council, thank you for your time. Mbage Nganga, who is the chairman of Task Force Committee on Intersex Persons, and that appeal out there to intersex persons in the Republic of Kenya. Big thank you as well to Zachary Mwangi, KNBS Director General, who spoke to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. I'm Linda Ugutu.